The armor of past battles lined Jimmy Maness's garage. Helmets, shirts, worn photos, trophies, and tools. Jimmy Maness is a racer who started in the 1960s with motorcycles for Harley-Davidson and continues today with stock cars. He's an honest man who has worked hard in his career, and although he's now at an age where many would be retired, Jimmy isn't stopping anytime soon.
Okay, my full name is James Franklin, but I don't anybody know anything about the Franklin. I'm known by Jimmy. So when I was young, when I was born, my dad had tuberculosis, and my dad stayed in the hospital. I can't hardly remember him being at home, and he was in the Woodman World Hospital, and he spent most of his life there. And my mom, she pretty well raised us because, well, my dad wasn't there. So as things rocked on, my mom ended up getting a divorce. And when they got her divorce, my mom still, I mean, we were one happy family. We still saw my dad and all that. But my dad ended up, after he got out of the hospital, he had emphysema because he didn't have but one lung. And so my dad died, and my mom's still alive. My mom would be 101 years old in March. So she still gets around pretty good. I mean, she has dementia, but you wouldn't know it talking to her. I mean, she's a go-getter, and she says I'm gonna live as long as she is, but I don't think I'll make that long. She's been a good mom, and I'd do anything in the world for her. Well, as a kid, I roller skated. I worked at a skating rink from the time I was in the 6th grade till I graduated from high school. And I roller skated, we played roller hockey. I won medals with playing roller hockey on the team, and I kind of cleaned the skating rink up, and one day I had a little motorcycle, and I kind of brought it inside. You know, they had board racing, and I thought I would try a little bit of it. And I got on the skating rink when the boss wasn't there, and I kind of put black rubber all over it, and he almost fired me for doing that. I had a job cleaning up the floor from riding the motorcycle inside on board. But I did some wild things. We took bicycles and turned them upside down and made them tall. It was always something to do. And we even had a unicycle. I made my first unicycle. I took a front forks off a bicycle and some main bearings out of a Triumph and welded the pedals on it, put a wooden 2x4 for a seat, and that was my first unicycle. One day I was on the way to work, and just happened to be a small motorcycle shop there, and I'd always stop and peep in the window. Well, when I peeped in the window, I kind of noticed the guy kept looking at me, and time went on, weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. He finally told me to come on in. So I went in and talked to him, and his name was Bill Powell. And I really have to say Bill Powell was the one that started me racing. And my first race was on motorcycles. And the way I got started, he says, "You want to go to the races with us sometime?" And I said, "Yes, I'd love to." I said, "But you have to ask my mom." So he said, "I'll do that." So he went home with me one day and talked to my mom, and my mom said, "Yeah, I could go with him." But the funny thing about it was I didn't get to ride in the front. I had to ride in the back of the pickup truck. But being I wanted to go, that's the way I got started. I made many a mile in the back of a truck. And they raced somewhere just about every week. So time rocked on. I think I was about 14. I wasn't old enough to have any license or anything. And so when I came 16, I got me a motorcycle. My mom helped me get a motorcycle. And the guy that was winning all the races down there was named James Arrington. And James kind of took me under his wing. He kind of taught me what to do and all that. And we went to the first race. Well, the first race was what they call an enduro race. And an enduro race was where you had to go a certain speed and be at certain checkpoints at a certain time. And what I did, I followed James. And if James was on time, he'd tell me to slow down a little bit and make it to the checkpoint. So when I got to the checkpoint, I was on time just like he was. And he ended up winning overall, and I really won my first race I ever rode. But as time went along, I got a little bit better and got a little more and started riding scramble racing. Scramble racing, I kind of moved up to what they call half-mile flat track. And flat track, well, everybody knows a flat track is a half mile, quarter mile, or a mile. Well, as time went on, I started riding on a Harley-Davidson Sprint, and it took a long time to win a race on a half mile. But anyhow, we finally started winning a few, and as time went along, I kind of got drafted. And when I got drafted, well, everybody said my racing was over with. But I went into service, and when I went into service, I got stationed at Fort Rooker, Alabama. I went through training there, then we were fixing to go to Vietnam. So in Vietnam, we moved to Fort Knox, Kentucky. We were going to go as a unit. Well, meanwhile, I got hooked up with Vic Crenshaw. Well, if anybody knows Vic, they know he races all the time. The way I got hooked up with Vic, I was in the service and I was stationed in Savannah, and they had a motorcycle race in Swainsboro. And so I decided I'd go up and watch. So I went up there and I didn't know anybody, I didn't think. Well, this boy walked up to me and said, "Jimmy, what are you doing up here?" And I said, "Well, I just came to watch." He says, "Well, you want to ride something?" I said, "I don't know anybody up here." He says, "Well, I know Vic." And he says, "He might let you ride his." And I said, "Well, let's go see." So he went over and asked Vic. Vic introduced it to him. And old Vic says, "Can you ride?" I said, "Well, I can ride a little bit." And so he let me ride his 250. Well, I went out for practice with it and I blew it up. So he didn't like that too much, but he said, "You want to ride this big motor?" And I said, "No, I ain't never ridden a big motor." So ended up, he let me ride it and I rode it and I won the first race. But when that happened, I told him I was on the way to Vietnam. So when I went back to the base camp, we went from Savannah to Fort Knox, formed a unit. We left Fort Knox as the 3rd and 17th Cav, and we went as a complete unit. We flew to California. At California, we boarded a ship. When we boarded that ship, we went under the Golden Gate Bridge, and all the guys were laughing and said, "Ain't gonna be nothing to this," because the old boat, and it was just as smooth as sail. We went to sleep that night and we woke up and everybody was kind of upchucking all over the thing because the boat was rocking back and forth. We wasn't in the bay or anything. So it took us 21 days to get to Vietnam. And when we got to Vietnam, we saw incoming rounds this way and then we saw outgoing rounds back. And I kind of said, I don't think I need to be here. But it wasn't nothing we could do about it. So we went in there, we went in Bien Hoa, and then Long Binh, we went to Cu Chi. Cu Chi, I spent most of my time at Cu Chi, and there was 4 of us that were helicopter mechanics. And really and truly, I couldn't tell you too much about anything in Vietnam because there was 4 of us to keep 50 helicopters flying, and we didn't even know what day it was. They kept us pretty busy, and so when I got out of the service, I started racing full time. I rode out of Vic's shop, and we were winning our share of the races. In fact, I guess I won the most races around the Southeast that could be won. When I started racing, everybody had black levers, and on a mile track, you see 24 riders out there, and all of them had black. You couldn't tell who was who. So Betty came up with the idea that we would get a special colored set of levers. And believe it or not, we got a colored set that was called Hot Pink. And believe me, they could see me on the back straightaway or anywhere else as far as that goes. And I got known as Pink Britches. I started the colored levers in motorcycles. And that rocked on the whole time until I made the Harley team. In fact, my first year on the Harley team, they let me have pink factory levers. But after the first year, I had to go with orange and black. And that's one reason that I'm still with orange and black on race cars. And I rode for Harley-Davidson for about 10 years. And in 1979, well, I won quite a few races. Our total on motorcycles was 762. So I had my share of wins. Well, I guess about the fastest I've ever been down was at Daytona International Speedway. On a road race course, we were running probably, I guess the motorcycle might have been running 160, maybe 170. But I blew a tire at the start-finishing line, and I slid all the way to the first turn. The motorcycles run the same road course down there. They go in the infield and all and come back out on the big track. They don't make all the way around the track. It's kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about a 6-turn instead of a 4-turn. But at Daytona, you can realize how fast it goes. You can be going down the back straightaway running 150, 160 miles an hour. When you get to the corner, the shocks and springs, the motorcycle just kind of squats down and gets out from under your seat there. You kind of feel kind of funny. And if the wind's blowing, you're liable to drop maybe 1 or 2 lanes. But if somebody's beside you, they're going to drop too because they in the same wind. So that's a pretty hairy feeling there. My wife, when we were racing motorcycles, and my daughter too, she spent more time sleeping under a motorcycle than she did in a bed, because when we were racing motorcycles, we traveled, people wouldn't believe the miles that we would travel a year. I traded vans every other year, and we would average 100 to 125,000 miles a year. And normally we would race maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And when I'm saying that, I'm talking about we'd race in Astrodome one time, and then go to Springfield, Illinois. It's just unreal how far we travel. I traveled every place east of the Mississippi. But in 1979, I decided that it was time for me to quit. So I quit that, took up fishing. Fishing lasted about 6 or 8 months. So they wanted me to go to a little old track out here called Gordon Park. Well, I went out there and I saw that and I said, dude, I can do that. And everybody said, well, you might can ride a motorcycle, but you can't drive no car. I said, I might not, but I believe I can. So that rocked on for about, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. So I ended up, I found me a car. And the first race I ran second. And the first year I won the points thing at Gordon Park Speedway. And that's almost history. I've been racing ever since. Believe it or not, my first car cost $400. It was a Walter Newman, and that tells you how long ago it's been. But old Walt, he built my first car, and we ended up winning the points thing the first year that I drove it. And the cars have come a long ways. You pretty well still have a Camaro front snout, but from there back is not. And I'd have to say Walt, he's about the best. I'll put his workmanship against any of them. But I think all total we've won, I'd say 360 races in a Walter Newman car. There's always something you can do to a race car. If you want to work on it, there's always something you do. You can always tighten bolts, or check this or check that, or weigh it out, or change this body part. Don't think they're going to stay pretty all the time. They're not. Because if you're going to race it, it's going to get skinned up. It's going to get bent up. And I have a metal brake, and I've learned how to put the bodies on them. The metal comes 4x10 sheets, and then everything you see on that car is made except the nose. All the inside sheet metal you make, the outside, the nose is the only thing that comes prefab. In 1990, I think it was 1991 or 1992, I won the Alabama State Championship, and we did good. I mean, it was a good race. I mean, I really deserved winning. I won it, and we came home, and in East Alabama, you could run what they call a triple disc clutch. But when we came home, they had the Georgia State the next weekend. So we went to the Georgia State in Cordele, and we did pretty good in the heat race, but we wasn't up front. So in the feature race, for some reason my car got super fast. I was passing one a lap, and when I got to the front, I really just rode. And after the race, I got protested. Well, the guy says, I know you were in Alabama last week and you won and you had a triple disc. I said, yeah, I did. I says, but I don't have it in it now. He said, well, you hadn't changed that clutch in a week. I said, well, you're going to lose your money if you protest me. I said, I don't have a triple disc. So he rocked on and kept on, and finally the guy that owned the track, Ben, come over there and he says, Jimmy, can I look? I said, yeah, you can look. And we had an open trailer back then, and he crawled up under there and he came back out. He says, there ain't gonna be no protest because I didn't have a triple disc. I changed the clutch that week, but that guy didn't believe we worked. You'd be surprised what kind of work we did back then. I don't work quite as hard now because I don't quite have the energy I did back then. My mom asked me, she said, how much would it cost for me to get you to quit racing? I asked her, I said, Mother, why do you want me to quit something I love doing? She said, well, you're not going to quit anyhow, so it didn't matter. I knew I was safe.